and not with great results.
Anyway, let's head down to the feature match. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. This is round 5 here at GP Providence. I'm Gabby Sparts, joined today by Luis Scott Vargas, and our main match today is going to be Julian Wilds versus Seth Manfield. You see Julian on the left, currently sitting at 4-0, playing at white-blue flash. It looks like there might be some red splashing here, and Seth, on the other hand, is playing Grixis Control, sitting at 4-0. These might not be the correct names.
Yeah,
of the decks. We will get those
into
updated.
It.
The game is off to a pretty slow start, just a couple lands for each player. Looks like a Tune with Ether for Julian, providing some energy, and also another land.
So we have some sweet decks here. Julian is on 4-color energy, is what it looks like, actually. And Seth is on black-green delirium. So Julian's deck has Long Tusk Cub, Reflector Mage, and Whirler Virtuoso fighting side by side. So these Ether hubs that you see are going to be really crucial in him being able to cast all his spells, and Attune with Ether also a big part of that.
Yeah, can you tell us a little bit more about what Julian's deck is trying to do? This is not something that we've seen a lot of.
It basically has a lot of the good energy cards like Voltaic Brawler, Long Tusk Cub, Servant of the Conduit, and Whirler Virtuoso, paired with just powerful cards like Woodland Wanderer, the 2/2 that gets a ++1 for each color of mana you play it with. So being a 4-color deck, Julian gets to take advantage of that, as well as Reflector Mage and Verger's Gearhulk and Tireless Trackers, just high-quality cards, as well as Tameo Field Research. It's basically just a 4-color good stuff deck with like a minor energy theme. So pretty sweet stuff, whereas Seth, on the other hand, his green-black Delirium deck is a much more controlling version. We're not seeing Blossoming Defense in this deck. We're seeing Pilgrim's Eye and Emrakul, the Promised End, multiple copies of Ishkanah. So this is a kind of a control deck against a mid-range deck, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see how this plays out.
You want to hear a good story about Julian Wilds' deck list?
All right, yeah. Go ahead.
So he started with an Etherworks list, and then he kind of just took a look at that and said, you know what, I love Tameo, so I want Tameo in my deck. And then he continued looking at the list, and he said, you know what, we could also just have a lot more creatures. And that is where this came from. So
it's Temur Etherworks plus Tameo minus the Etherworks.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess that works. Ooh.
So it looks like a Spell Queller coming down.
And Spellcaller is attempting to pick up a card in its second mode, which is just 2/3 flash
just
flyer.
Ambush.
Yeah.
Flying ambusher.
It's like a flying ambush viper, but a high quality
but
card
just much
instead.
Better.
Yeah.
Yes,
yeah.
I knew. Obviously, I knew that was coming. It does manage to ambush that Pilgrim's Eye. It's poor eye.
You only knew that was coming because that was the right place to go.
All right. The Pilgrim's Eye should have seen that coming, but it clearly didn't. It just straight ran into that Spell Queller.
And we've seen that Ether Hub tap multiple times for colored mana. We'll see how many times it gets used, but I suspect it's going to be many, many times over the course of this game.
Seth Manfield on the other side, our world champion. He's also the PT Shadows over Innistrad and Phage Reforged top 8 competitor. He has 9 GP top 8s to his name, most recently in Sydney.
Ooh, that Pilgrim's Eye did not die for naught, though. Dead Weight is going to be able to finish off the Spellcaller now, thanks to the 1 damage from Pilgrim's Eye.
Is Dead Weight a card that you can anticipate to see in decks like this? It doesn't seem like it takes down some of the creatures in the format. It seems pretty good against vehicles, but...
It's not a very commonly played card, but Seth's playing in order to enable Delirium just has a random enchantment. He's just got 1 copy of Dead Weight and 1 in the sideboard. It does a good job of killing Toolcraft Exemplar and can shrink Inventor's Apprentice, so it's a fine card.
Yeah, it gets the Veteran Motorist real good, too. Tireless Tracker coming down for Julian, and an island gets to provide an extra clue.
And this is early enough in the tournament that Seth's still trying to figure out what Julian is playing, because it's unlikely that Seth knew what was going on, and now he's seen Spell Queller, Tireless Tracker, and Spire Bluff Canal, so if I were Seth, I would be quite confused over what Julian was trying to do, and Seth's just gonna have to learn as as the game progresses.
Look, you don't. It's not every day that you play against 4-color Tameo aggro.
Yeah, if Seth could see the overlay, he would still be quite confused.
Like grapple from the past from Seth Manfield.
And that actually, he does actually have Delirium now, so this Ishkana is going to be a lot more threatening than she would be otherwise.
Ishkana coming down with extra spiders as well. Let's see what Julian can follow up with. Tireless Tracker can't really attack through this army of spiders.
Now, even if Julian has another land to make another clue to make Tireless Tracker a 5/4, Seth can just triple block with 2 spiders and the Ishkanon, and be profiting. On the other hand, Julian just keeps gaining clues here, so I think he meant to put a 2 on that clue, not the energy counter. So he's got a card draw engine, and Julian's deck is powerful enough to eventually defeat an Ishkana, even if Seth isn't really pressuring him very much.
Yeah, I think Julian just noticed about the energy. So now he's fixed that. That's fixed. 2 clues and more energy this time around.
The unfortunate part for Julian, though, is that Seth does eventually get to Emrakul him. Seth has 4 copies of Traverse the Ulvenwald and then an Emrakul, the Promised End, and it's pretty hard to recover from getting hit by Emrakul.
What do you think of these black-green Delirium decks? At the last Pro Tour, something that we saw a lot is people trying to turbo out Emrakuls by fueling Delirium. Whereas, at this Pro Tour, we saw a lot of people trying to cheat out Emrakul, if you may, by Aetherworks Marvel. So how do you think these black-green Delirium decks are positioned nowadays?
It's funny because there's more of a range now. It used to be that black-green Delirium was the thing you just said. Turbo Emrakul, kind of slow, like actually what Seth's playing right now.
Mm-hmm.
But we saw a new breed of black-green Delirium decks, ranging from the aggressive, playing more 1-drops and Blossoming Defense and Smuggler's Copter, to the mid-range, which still plays Copter, but maybe more Gear Hooks, to where Seth is, which is just full-on control. This is just control black-green Delirium. And you never know when your opponent plays Hissing Quagmire which one you're up against, and they all have different strengths and weaknesses.
All right, so Khalid's coming down for Seth. Oh, and we're going to see another Spell Queller ambush. Not today, Khalidus.
This one may be a little more effective than the last one, since Khalidus is slightly more threatening than Pilgrim's Eye. But now that Julian has seen Pilgrim's Eye, Deadweight, Vessel of Nascency, you got to assume that Seth's on the more controlling Delirium build, which does put you in a more of a clock in terms of finishing the game. Like Julian, had he been playing against one of the more mid-range or lower curve decks, he'd be feeling pretty good right now. He's got a stable board, strong extra cards off Tireless Tracker once he starts cracking those clues. Against Seth, Seth's already had Artifact, Creature, Enchantment, Sorcery, Instant, 5 types for Emrakul. It's not hard to get a land in there. Seth's potentially 2 turns away from casting Emrakul. And at that point, Julian can imagine that a lot of his cards are going to hit the graveyard.
All right, so Julian's starting to see what's within those clues, starting to draw more cards. He's found a land off the top, which provides him yet another clue.
This particular matchup is one where I'd prefer to be on the black-green Delirium side, or the controlling black-green Delirium side, rather than the more aggressive black-green Delirium
Why is
decks.
that?
Julian has a lot of ways to stop offense. Reflector Mages and Whirler Virtuosos are just good at stopping beatdown, less good at stopping Emrakul. So in this particular matchup, I like Seth's choice of the more defensive Delirium deck, whereas against something like Aetherworks Marvel, you'd much rather be on the aggressive Delirium deck because it's just faster and pressures your opponent more.
So it looks like Julian's going to be attacking with a Tireless Tracker. And it's going to follow up the turn. It looks like a Whirler Virtuoso. All right, now we have the full 4 colors. Getting a little bit more energy, and we're going to have a pass back to Seth. Here you see Whirler Virtuoso on the right. Typically a limited card. We haven't seen this have much of an impact in Constructed. However, it's a 2/3. If you pay 3 energy, you get a 1/1 colorless softer artifact creature with flying, and you can activate this at any time.
And of note, this is a energy sink that requires no mana. So if Julian stacks up 6 or 9 energy, can immediately make 2 or 3 Thopters at any point in time with the Whirler Virtuoso, whereas some of the other energy cards require mana to use.
Or they require attacking or have other forms of restrictions on them as well.
Yeah, like Voltaic Brawler, for example.
All right, so Ishkana getting aggressive.
And Seth is trying to close out this game. He is attacking with Ishkana every turn here, despite getting attacked back for more damage. So I'm curious to see what his game plan is here, because generally you would think that the Black-Green Delirium control deck would not want to trade 3 damage for 4 damage or 3 damage for 5 damage. So presumably Seth has some follow-up here that would help make that more of a cohesive plan.
Seth holding his hands close to his chest. We don't have much of a clue of what he has yet.
I would say he plays his cards close to his vest, but he's not actually,
currently
wearing a vest. You know, if he joined coverage, he would get a vest. Coverage, I think each person gets 2 or 3 vests at the very least.
Why aren't you wearing a vest?
Tomorrow, I have a vest for tomorrow.
All right.
It's for Sunday. It's my Sunday vest. So the saying goes, right? Dressing in your Sunday vest.
Dressing in your Sunday vest with that kind of V. Julian Wilds is a New Englander, actually. He's friends with Ting Gwen. Playing 4-color Tameo aggro. So he still has a grip full of cards and 2 clues that he hasn't cracked yet. 3 clues now.
Inspiring Vantage is not a card I expect to see next to Forest and Island very often in this tournament, but I like what's going on here. I think that pushing the mana base of Standard for just to include a lot of powerful cards is pretty cool, because Attune with Ether, Servant of the Conduit, and Ether Hub all really do enable just basically picking the best of these 4 colors and just putting those cards together, even if the deck doesn't have that cohesive of a theme besides a light energy theme. Just combining great cards is often going to be good in a mid-range format.
It's kind of tough, though, because especially with the Ether Hubs, and if you're not creating that much more energy, sometimes you just get stuck with a colorless land. So it does let you play 4 colors for something like this, but you can also have a really hard time casting all your colors and have some cards stranded in your hand. Looks like these creatures are going to be attacking, and Murder is going to take down. Oh, we're going to see a bit of an ambush here.
Yeah, if that Kalitas comes into play before blocks, then this could end up turning out poorly for Julian, though I believe he's got a Harness Lightning waiting in the wings here to be used.
So the Murder does resolve. The Spell Queller does die. Kalitas comes back to the battlefield. Looks like Seth is now choosing to go to blocks, and Kalitas looking to do some ambushing here.
So Julian deciding whether he wants to kill Kalitas before blockers or not, and one advantage of doing that is basically that Seth doesn't get a free block. The disadvantage is if Seth doesn't know that Kalitas is dying, then Seth might make blocks that are more profitable for Julian. But on balance, I think that Julian made the right decision here.
And so that Kalitas does go down. And now we're moving to blocks. Seth triple blocking all the spiders to the Whirler Virtuoso in an attempt to take it down. Assigning 1, 2, 3.
You know what's really funny about these spiders is 1/2s are just notoriously difficult to kill in combat.
Yes.
When you triple or quad block with 1/2s, like a 5/5 takes out 2 of them. You would think these spiders would be easier to squash, but they really aren't.
Yeah, it seemed that fight was somewhat reminiscent of a Whirler Virtuoso trying to smack a bunch of spiders and actually only got 1 and then ran away.
Yeah, he's not a virtuoso at spider killing, maybe at making Thopters, but...
Well, a second Virtuoso, let's see if he is any better at dealing with these spiders. And a Long Tusk Cub coming down for Julian. Out of cards too, but he does have those 3 clues that he'll be able to crack eventually.
All right, we're going to see if we get the energy counter moved on screen here, since Julian, he's got enough permanence now that the energy counter's kind of drifted off to the left there.
Long Tusk Cub, another pretty good way to use energy without actually having to spend mana on it.
And it's funny because the Cub itself doesn't generate energy unless it gets a hit in, but frequently in this deck you'll play it with access to like 4 or 6 energy and be able to get a hit in because it threatens to attack as a 4/4 or a 5/5.
All right, so 3-mana Liliana, the Last Hope, coming down for Seth. Now he's deciding what he wants to do. Looks like he might be taking down. He reveals a Grimflayer and another Ishkana. Has a choice of what he wants to get back, and it looks like he might be going for that Grimflayer.
Yeah, it's tempting to just be able to get a card you can cast this turn, since Seth, you know, has been stuck on 5 lands for quite some time here, and he's playing a deck that really does want to have more lands. He looks like he just hit his 6.
So the Grimflayer does come down and continuing to trying to stabilize this board and also making his land drops again. So continuing to try to catch up with Julian.
Tireless Tracker really putting in some work, because one of the things about this game is that if the game stalls out for too long, that Tireless Tracker is going to draw Julian 3 or 4 extra cards. And
it already has how many?
It's already drawn two extra cards thanks to the clues, the 2++1 counters on it. That's our way to track it very easily. And you know, we're going to see 2 or 3 more clues being created here, which that just means that if Seth's trying to grind this game out, Julian's just going to be a bunch of cards ahead, which does mean that eventually Seth's going to have to find Emrakul, because you could be 6, 7 cards ahead and Emrakul can still just decimate your board.
No, this is one of the reasons why a lot of times a Tireless Tracker comes down and it just dies immediately. So Julian deciding, it seems like yeah, taking a look at how much energy he has would help us a bit here. But it looks like that Cub might be getting in there. Interestingly enough, too, it looks like as the game progresses, you know, Seth has continued to fall a little behind, and Julian continues to be aggressive here. Looks like only the Cub is getting in, and not the Tireless Tracker.
At this point, Seth has enough blockers that Tireless Tracker would potentially die in combat, and it is Julian's card draw machine here, so I think it makes sense to hold it back. Cub does threaten to trade for something, though. Seth gets to siphon away a bunch of energy.
All right, now we know. So 6 energy. This is quite a bit of counters.
So Julian can use 4 energy and take down Grimflayer, or use 6 energy and take down Ishkana. What Seth has to worry about is something like potentially Harnessed Lightning. What would that do? That would could take out like Ishkana. Yeah, that would still not be great for Julian. So I suspect the Cub is mostly just going to trade here.
Yeah, so Ishkana and 2 spiders. Looks like that Grimflayer is not getting into the blocking today. Yeah, assigning that Ishkana first. And so the Cub gets a trade with Ishkana, and now Seth is just left with 2 spiders and the Grimflayer.
That Cub acted as a Harness Lightning. Traded 6 energy and a card for Ishkana there.
So he's going to follow up with another Cub, though with significantly less energy this time. It's looking quite less threatening.
Cats sleep a lot, so it doesn't surprise me that.
Not too surprising. What about a Noxious Gearhulk, though? Taking down the Tireless Tracker finally.
That's a pretty good step forward for Seth.
Also gains quite a bit of life.
Yeah, gaining Seth not only life, removing Julian's biggest creature, and making it so Julian's going to draw fewer cards in the future. This also means that if the Noxious Gearhulk dies, Liliana, the Last Hope, can bring it back and, you know, for another go round. So that was a pretty big play for Seth.
Counter just removed. It is was the counters on Tireless Tracker. Needed no longer.
The Gearhulk cycle being pretty powerful and impactful. We saw Torrential Gearhulk, you know, win the tournament last weekend in the Pro Tour, and actually played the mirror in the finals. Seen some Cataclysmic Gearhulks floating here and there, and definitely a lot of Verdurous Gearhulks and Noxious Gearhulks.
What do you think is the best Gearhulk?
I think Torrential's probably going to end up being the best long term, because as more instants gets printed, it gets better and better. Though Verdurous Gearhulk might be the best just on raw power level. Poor combustible Gearhulk.
Magic players, may I please
Looks like Julian found another cub off the top.
Strickland from the 10:30 team seal event. Please go to the on-demand stage area.
Long Tusk Cub is not a card that stacks particularly well, though, especially in a situation like this where they're not getting through. Because Julian had to use a lot of his energy in order to have the Cub take down Ishkana.
Looks like he's going to be cracking another clue. He just finds a land off the top, though. Wild Wonder?
Yeah, the
Woodland Wanderer.
Woodland Wanderer is going to be a 6/6 here, which is not a common sight, but 4 mana 6/6 trample vigilance. That is a real card.
Kind of felt like Woodland Wanderer never got his time to shine.
I think it was hard to find a combination of a deck that would want it and a deck that could cast it. Because 4-color decks don't always want just random. This is essentially like French vanilla, right? 4 mana 6/6.
Mm-hmm.
And decks that would want a 4 mana 6/6 frequently are like 2 colors, in which case it would only be a 4/4, so it doesn't quite get there.
Well, it's looking pretty good in 4-color Tameo aggro.
Yeah, it is not looking bad here, though. That Noxious Gearhulk really is putting a damper on any of Julian's beatdown plans, because it gains Seth 4 life. Also, killed the Tireless Tracker, and now if it dies, Liliana can bring it back. It also starts to threaten Julian's life total.
All right, so the Noxious Gearhulk getting in there. It has Menace, so if Julian wants to try to take this down, there's going to have to be multiple blocks.
And I don't even think Seth's unhappy if the Gearhulk does die.
Yeah, you can see the strength of a card like Liliana potentially threatening to get that back, and if it comes back, kills another creature, gains more life, so...
So it did a non-lethal amount to the Wanderer, which means that Seth presumably has a follow-up that can kill the Wanderer.
Yeah, so he's playing a Kalidas, ticking up Liliana. That's an easy way to take down that creature, and it also gives Seth an extra zombie.
Yeah,
That was a nice way to get a little bit of value post-combat.
Yeah, that worked out pretty well for Seth. He's he's able to just add a ton of stuff to his board, and now he's just kind of crushing Julian on board.
Yep, and that's going to do it for Game 1. Seth Manfield takes down the first game. Round 5 here at GP Providence.
Seth turned the corner pretty quickly with that Noxious Gearhulk. He went from being somewhat on the defensive and, getting attacked every turn for the last 3 turns to all of a sudden it didn't even become close as to who was ahead in the race. Like, Noxious Gearhulk just completely turned the game around.
Seth was pretty aggressive up until that point too, though. We saw Ishkanas getting in there and, trading less damage than it was against the Tireless Tracker.
Yeah, and part of the reason that Seth likely was attacking with Ishkana like that is that he just knew Gearhulk was coming down on turn 6 or 7, because Seth was stuck on 5 lands for quite some time.
In the meantime, let's take a peek over and see what's going on between Pedro Carvalho and Andreas Gans. So Pedro is paying Marty tokens. We have a deck tech with him that we will be showing in between the rounds, and Andreas is playing black-red aggro. It looks like a bit of a mirror match, though Pedro has more of a token theme going on. There you see Servo Exhibition in the graveyard is part of that plan.
And we have the rare sight of a Toolcraft Exemplar that has First Strike. And the card's often a 3/2 on turn 2. Doesn't very often have First Strike when it's relevant, but that is kind of forcing potential double block here because Pedro has the 3 artifacts in order to give it First Strike.
It does that. Yep. So it looks like the Smuggler's Copter might be the thing that goes down here. And the PNLR will be able to finish off that Toolcraft Exemplar. Assuming that nothing goes wrong in combat, of course.
And one reason that Pedro might want to kill Pia instead of Smuggler's Copter is leaving the opponent with multiple vehicles and no ways to crew them. It is an effective strategy. So if Pedro kills Pia Nalar and then finds a way to kill that Thopter token that piloted the Smuggler's Copter, Andreas could just have two Smuggler's Copters in play and no way to make them active.
So Andreas is looting right now with the Smuggler's Copter, decided to discard an unlicensed Disintegration. And yeah, he's going with the line that you mentioned. So PNLR goes down. We did see that Andreas has a backup PNLR, which not only comes in by itself, she also brings another Thopter. So it looks like the plan of leaving him without any creatures to crew is not really going to work out too well here. All right, PNLR coming down. bringing another Thopter with her too. Now these Copters are ready to hit the skies.
And both players at relatively high life totals, so really whoever gets like the first big hit in could just be ahead in this race. And Andreas has an opportunity here to send for 6 potentially, but he may not be doing that just out of respect for Reckless Bushwhacker, because Pedro's playing a deck where what if Pedro goes land, Inventor's Apprentice, Servo Exhibition, Reckless Bushwhacker, attack for 1 million? Andreas, I think, has some fear of that.
It's hard to know, too, because you don't know if your opponent is really on a tokens plan until you see it happen, although Servo Exhibition is a little bit of a tell. It can't just come and get you.
And that's the sort of thing that you need to do to succeed at the GP level, is look at a deck like Pedro Carvalho's. You're playing against him. You don't know what he's playing exactly, his exact build, but then you spot that Servo Exhibition, and you're like, all right, well, the only reason to play Servo Exhibition in this format is if you're playing Reckless Bushwhacker.
Sure.
And by virtue of me seeing that one card, I just gain a ton of information about your deck list and your strategy. I should play around outnumber now. You know, I should expect to maybe take 6 damage out of nowhere. And those kind of contextual clues really help you plan out your game when you're dealing with imperfect information.
Andreas did discard that Unlicensed Disintegration earlier, especially considering that he has an artifact in play. Is there a reason you think he would have discarded that card? It seems very powerful in his deck.
One main reason is that he's playing against a deck with just mostly just cheap small creatures, and paying 3 mana to kill any of the creatures Pedro has in play is just not that effective. So the tokens deck just does not tend to play cards like Fleetwheel Cruiser or, you know, Depala, like slightly bigger creatures. So you end up in a spot where you don't want to spend 3 mana to kill really anything your opponent has.
Ooh, and Weaver of Lightning coming down for Andreas, and this is the kind of card that can shut down a strategy like tokens. We're going to bring you updates on what happens in this match, but our main match is going, so we should head back and see how they're doing. We're back here with Julian Wilds and Seth Manfield. Seth was able to take down the first game, and we've come in right in time to take a look at Julian's hand. It looks like a Transgress the Mind is going to be revealing what Julian has available to him. Tireless Tracker, another Woodland Wanderer, Spell Queller, and a Tameo.
230 Legacy Plus. Your pairings are being posted by the blue gathering point. Again, the
It looks like the Long Tusk Cup is not an option. Well, not only is it not an option, but it's also in play.
Which is good for Julian. That's actually one of the better things he has going on, is that he's going to get to hit with Long Tusk Cup. He's going to get to generate energy, because right now he's missing not only a 3rd land to play Tireless Tracker or Spell Queller. In order to play Queller, it has to be a white land. If he's got a Harness Lightning, he just can't cast. He's on blue and green mana. So turns out playing 4 colors does have somewhat of a drawback.
So Seth continuing to decide how he wants to sculpt the rest of this game.
And the fact that Julian's missing lands actually makes this somewhat more difficult, because if you knew Julian was drawing an untapped white source, you might just take Spell Queller, because that'll disrupt your next turn. But it is the safest to take Tireless Tracker, because that is the most easy to cast card. If Julian draws any untapped land, he could just cast it.
And he is going to go for that. So down goes the Tireless Tracker. This does leave with Julian with a Spell Queller in hand, though no white mana to cast it yet. Long Tusk Cub gets to get in, provide 2 energy, and he's missed his land drop.
All right, so Seth has a real opportunity here, because even though that cub is growing every turn, essentially because those energy can just feed it and it gets gigantic, Seth is able to deploy his cards here without really fear of Julian doing anything. He knows every card in Julian's hand but 1, and he can narrow that 1 card down to not a land.
Three mana for Seth. Liliana. Liliana gets to target that cub. The cub gets to continue to grow.
Yeah, the Liliana will make it a 0/1, but then it can, of course, eat those 2 energy sitting around, become a 1/3, or a 1/2 rather, and then just attack and get 2 more energy.
Oh, wow. That's a big draw step for Julian. He's drawn an Inspiring Vantage, and it's an untapped white source, too. That Spell Queller not looking to do too much ambushing, though, since Seth does know that it's there.
Seth might be in a position where he only has sorceries to play, in which case the Queller is going to make this turn pretty difficult. But if Seth has an instant here, this is going to go quite well for Seth, because Julian is in a spot where it's difficult, and it's very costly for him to just keep mana up every turn and not doing anything.
You think he just runs it out?
There's a chance. I mean, when your opponent knows about Spell Queller and passes with all their mana up, it's just not that likely they're going to successfully hit with it.
So Liliana continues to take up, targeting the long tusk cub.
Well, it looked like Seth was thinking about it, and he may have changed his mind.
Yeah.
But I assume that's what he's going to want to do.
Yeah, so he is going to go ahead and do that. All right, so Spell Queller, yeah, it looks like he was passing the turn, so Spell Queller does just come in. No value, just a 2/3 flyer, but we'll be able to pressure this Liliana now.
Julian drew a land, so Julian actually, if he wants, he can slam Tameo, plus Tameo on both of his creatures, and just attack with both creatures, and at least one of them will survive, and he'll draw an extra card.
Yes, that is exactly what he's doing. So taking up Tameo, targeting both of his creatures.
Magic
Bash.
Players Standard Plus, your pairings
Looks like they're both
for
coming
round
at
number 2
Liliana.
are now being posted by the blue Gathering Point flag. Again, Magic Players Standard Plus.
All right, let's see
your
what Seth can
pairings for
follow
round
up
number
with.
2 are now
Oh, he doesn't even have a
being
removal
posted.
spell, he just has a Hissing Quagmire?
So Hissing Quagmire getting in front of this, but this feels bad, especially because he's missing land. Like, aye.
Yeah, because Julian's going to get to draw 2 cards off Tameo. Seth's going to lose his land. Liliana's going to take a couple damage. This works out really well for Julian.
Yeah, it did. So that Cub is going to trade with a Hissing Quagmire. He gets to draw lands, and now Seth is also down a land.
Seth just drew an Ishkana, which he now can't
Now
cast.
can't cast.
Granted, she wouldn't have had Delirium, but Liliana could have potentially spiked Delirium, depending on how things went.
All right, Mind Rack Demon. Let's see if Delirium is hit.
Looks like
Yeah, looks.
instant sorcery land creature.
Yeah. It's always a little bit of a liability, Mind Rack Demon. You're not sure if it's... I mean, he's very good at powering Delirium himself.
And Seth needed to hit 2 types out of 4 flips, which is not unreasonable.
Mind Rack Demon now will be able to also block the Spell Queller if it needs to.
Yeah. Between Mind Rack Demon and Liliana, I think that Spell Queller is probably staying home.
All right, so Julian is ticking up, and this time he's targeting both the Spell Queller and the Mind Rack Demon.
Tameo is a great card. She's really powerful. Even if Seth wants to attack Tameo here, Mind Rack Demon will draw Julian a card. So I think Julian is not very afraid to tap out given those circumstances.
Looks like Woodland Wanderer coming down, only tapping for 3 colors this time, unfortunately. Not as big as he could be in this deck.
Yeah, I guess the double forest makes that a little tough.
We're going to see a pass back to Seth, and Seth still with a lot of cards in hand, but still choked on mana.
And Seth has Delirium, so if he had a 5th land, there's a pretty good chance he would want to slam Ishkana, but I think he may have to Pilgrim's Eye to get his 5th land. I don't think he has a 5th land in his hand. Well, we'll find out momentarily here.
Looks like that Mind Rack Demon is getting aggressive. Liliana takes up, targeting that Spell Queller, and then the Mind Rack Demon also attacks Tameo. So this does drop Tameo down to 2, and Pilgrim's Eye now coming back down for Seth. This will provide him a swamp.
So Seth representing Grasp of Darkness. Pretty good chance he doesn't have it given how he played 2 turns earlier and the fact that he milled 2 Grasps with Mind Rack Demon. Yeah, Tameo's been great this game. She's drawn Julian 3 cards so far. Is probably going to draw him 2 more cards this turn. If he pluses Tameo, well, I guess if he pluses Tameo on Woodland Wanderer, he could draw an extra card and then plus on Mind Rack Demon to draw a card when it attacks. And even if Tameo dies at this point, she saved 8 damage and drew 5 cards.
All right, so it looks like Tameo continues to tick up. First target is a Woodland Wanderer. Second target is a Pilgrim's Eye. All right, Woodland Wanderer just encroaching. Looks like gonna be trying to chuck that Hedron at Liliana. Let's see how successful it is.
And even if the Pilgrim's Eye chumps, that means Julian draws a card, though if it jumps, Liliana does live.
All right, so Seth deciding he'd rather not let Julian draw more cards, so that Liliana is dead. The Pilgrim's Eye gets to see another day. And now he has a pretty good read that there's no Grasp of Darkness there, especially after that happened.
Oh, yeah. Also, Julian passed the turn with all his mana. If I'm Seth, I'm thinking at least a Spell Queller is coming out here. Potentially more. I mean, it's hard to tell what Julian has as instants in his deck. He's playing 4 colors. You have no idea what could be going on over there.
So Mindwreck Demon attacking Tamio. Let's see what Julian has to say about that. Looks like Hardness Lightning will be taking down that Pilgrim's Eye. And then a second Hardness Lightning generates enough energy to take down the Mindwreck Demon. That was a nice sequence of Hardness Lightnings for Julian.
Yeah, it was a shockingly good play. It ends up using 2 removal spells for 2 creatures, but one of them is a Mindwreck Demon. Though the Pilgrim's Eye replaced itself. So overall, Julian is down a card, but given how ahead he is on board, I think that he's happy with that exchange.
All right. Ishkana coming down, though, for Seth will help shore up the attackers. His Quagmire coming down for him as well.
Problem for Seth is that Tamio, I mean, she can start minusing at some point, too. If she minuses and taps down Ishkana on a Spider, then Woodland Wanderer and Spell Queller can both just get in there. And Woodland Wanderer starts to become a pretty fast clock when even when your opponent starts at 17.
Magic Players Meet Modern Showcase. Your pairings for round number 4 are now being posted. Again, pairings for round 4 of the Modern Showcase are now being posted.
If you're Julian, do you think that a match like this favors you?
I've liked how things have looked. I mean, Noxious Gearhulk did a real number on Julian in game 1, but the way this game is played out, Seth's deck is soft to Tamio. Black-green, has trouble with that card. I remember in Pro Tour Eldritch Moon, we played Tamio in our advanced sideboard, and it was just fantastic against Black-green. That was our best card against that in that matchup. So I think that having access to that is really giving Julian an advantage here, and he has 3 in his main deck.
I remember it was, I forget exactly which match it was, but I was with Randy in the booth and we were taking a look at your guys' sideboard, and you were in a game where it looked like there was no way you could possibly come back, and then we were wondering what is the one thing that he could potentially draw to actually pull this game out and slam Tamio.
Yeah, that was almost assuredly against Reed Duke when
I think
I beat multiple resolved Emrakuls that game thanks to Tamio. It was a combination of Tamio, good play, and insane amounts of luck.
All right.
Mostly the third, also the first. There was a little bit of the second, but
looks like 4 mana and another Woodland Wanderer. This one's a little beefier.
These Woodland Wanderers just getting out of control. This is now a 4 mana 6/6 Trample Vigilance when Seth's already on the back foot here.
Looks like the whole Spider crew decided to block the Wanderer earlier. Does take down the Ishkana, but the baby spiders get to live.
Tireless Tracker, not exactly enough to get Seth back into the cards race against Tamio, but it's a start.
Also, Traverse the Ulvenwald. It's going to be a nice one here as well.
Seth might be in a position where he just gets Emrakul and just hopes to wait a turn to survive, and then just hopes to go off with Emrakul next turn, since he's got creature, instant, land,
sorcery,
and artifact. So 5 types. And he's got 7 lands in play. So if he plays an 8th land, he's just going to be able to play Emrakul.
All right, so Julian is going to take down that Tireless Tracker. And he now knows he needs to get a little aggressive as he has to plan for this Emrakul turn. Seth's sitting at 17 life. He's not under too much pressure.
No, Julian will not be able to kill Seth this turn. Tamio is a bit of a liability on an Emrakul turn. Minusing Tamio to tap 2 of Julian's creatures means that the extra turn he gets off Emrakul is just frequently not going to do very much.
All right, so Julian has to sequence this in a way where he does not get absolutely destroyed when Seth is able to play that Emrakul.
Oh, Seth has the 6th type, actually. Liliana's in there also.
There's a Liliana as well.
So Seth can actually just cast Emrakul right now.
All right, a Tune with Ether, providing Julian with another land and a little bit more energy.
It'd be sweet if Julian just got a swamp here. Just no black card, just gets a swamp,
Might as well.
Yeah, just to send a message here.
It does help the Woodland Wanderers. It also makes your mana base a lot worse, so. Woodland Wanderer getting in there, so that's just going to take the damage.
It's to Seth's benefit to leave the most number of creatures in play because during Emrakul turns, triple blocks are really effective. Because Seth can do something like triple block your Spell Queller and or your Woodland Wanderer and have you assign damage in a way that's advantageous to me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, casting Emrakul does create these interesting board positions where, you're not always looking to see like what is the most damage it can make, right? You're always using your cards to the most advantage. So taking a look at it from that perspective is interesting. All right, Emrakul coming down.
Julian's hand is six
Oh my
lands and an attune
God.
with either.
Because he has all his colors.
If I were Seth before this, I would be thinking that Julian didn't want to play creatures into an Emrakul because he'd be worried about me using them wrong.
Yeah.
But instead, it's like, nope, you just have 6 lands and an attune.
It's not the situation where you're looking and you're like, well, what could they possibly have? They haven't played anything in so many turns.
That's just my average 7-card hand.
That or you just choose to keep hands like that in a like.
Let's not focus on the hands I keep. Let's just focus on the. We've got a game to watch here. So, besides making attacks here that kill both of Julian's creatures, Emrakul can eat Woodland Wanderer, and one of the spiders can trade for Spell Queller. Seth can just minus Tameo and leave Julian with all lands and a Tameo on 3. That's not the worst place to be.
All right, so no board anymore for Julian.
Seth also gets to look at Julian's deck if he wants with that Evolving Wilds. He just chose to bin it. He just chose to bin it, but yeah. I appreciate the just playing faster as opposed to looking through Julian's deck.
Well, he's pretty far ahead at this point as well.
Actually, Julian doesn't have any lands to get with the tune.
Oh, he does not?
No, he's got one of each of the non-forest basics and 4 forests, and he's got 4 forests in play already, or between play and hand.
Yeah. All right, I will take Brawler coming down for Julian. Now he's facing Emrakul, couple spiders, and the Tameo probably not long for this world either.
No, the Tameo is going to buy Julian a turn here on that Emrakul, but next turn, Emrakul is coming across.
All right, so Murder takes down the Voltaic Brawler. The spider's enough to take down that Tameo, and another Ish kind of coming back, making some more spiders. Julian draws Harness Lightning for the turn, and that's not enough. He extends the hand, and Seth Manfield takes this match. This improves them to 5-0 here at GP Providence.
Julian's just a couple energies short of using Harness Lightning to kill Emrakul.
A couple?
Well, also it's an instant, so it wouldn't work. But other than that, he almost got there.
Aside from it's very many things that do not work well in that statement. It would be nice to harness lightning in Emrakul.
There are probably ways to do that are just very complicated.
Yeah.
Seth Manfield looking as excited as ever about winning his match.
All right, that'll do it here for round 5 at GP Providence.